Hi, everyone, and welcome to the End of Life Journey and Beyond, the Sands of Time. My name is Lisa Strahs-Lorenc, and I am a Bereavement Support Specialist. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Lisa. My name is Susan Capurso. I'm a legacy specialist, and we're happy to be here with you today.
And even though I am in a different place and a different climate, we are still trying to do our videos that do help people with all different situations. And today, we're talking about estrangement. This is a very difficult topic, and I will explain the circumstances actually of my own aunt and uncle, and also what this means to people who are trying to have a relationship with people, whether it's their children, whether it's their parents, sometimes it's their relatives of all different types, but estrangement is a very different kind of grief. And I will explain what that means. I want to start out with the story of my aunt and uncle. So my aunt and uncle had two children, my cousin, my older cousin, and their younger child, their son. Son was an amazing son, very educated, great kid, always did everything everybody wanted, and very, very close to his parents. Just before he got married, he married someone who my husband and I, got to know, and she seemed very dysfunctional. She asked us a lot of very personal questions before they got married, and she seemed very, very controlling. She was from a divorced family. And she also was very, the controlling part was, so what did you do with this? And how did you handle this? And just it seemed like she was going to take charge. So she got married to my cousin and had a child who was about 6 months older than my oldest child. We went to a party together, and the children were there together. Everything seemed like a wonderful party. The whole family was together, including my aunt and uncle, my cousin's parents. And after we left the party, everything seemed fine until my uncle called me. And out of the blue, he said to me that my cousin and his wife, and my other cousin, which was his sister, and her husband sat down with my aunt and uncle. And this cousin, her brother, said to him, my spouse and I have decided that we never want to see you again. And they all looked around and said, what is this? And where is this coming from? And the woman said, "We fear you interrupt our lives, and that you push yourselves into our lives, and it's very uncomfortable, and we don't want to have any part of that anymore." So, since that was very news to them, they all said, "Well, you never told us that. We didn't know anything about that. We don't understand this at all." And given no other explanations, they just stated that they didn't want them to be in their lives anymore and left. And my uncle on the phone said to me, I just don't understand. We never got that indication. It's out of the blue. And what am I going to do? And I said, okay, well, don't worry about it. I'm going to call up my cousin. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding, and don't worry about it. And I didn't even think twice about it. I called up my cousin and I said to him, I just got a phone call from your father, and he said something very strange. He said that you and your wife sat down with your sister and brother-in-law and my aunt and uncle, and told them that you never want to see them again. And he said, it's none of your business. And I said, Lee, that's really interesting because you've always been really close. We've always been really close cousins. And it is my business. Your father actually is like a father to me since I lost my father many years ago. And I don't understand any of this. And he said, well, just so that you know, if you were given a choice, he says, I want you to think about this. If you were given a choice by your spouse, whether to have me and and your daughter, or your parents and your sister, what would you choose? And I said, no spouse would give me that choice because they're my relatives and I couldn't make that kind of choice. He says, well, that's the choice I had to make. So I did what I thought was best. He said, and I never want to hear you again from you again, and please lose my number. And he hung up on me. And that was the last I ever heard of my cousin. And that was 38 years ago. And I only know that from the age of my daughter. I called back my uncle and I said to him, maybe something happened, maybe it'll get better, maybe it will change. However, in the meantime, let's talk about bereavement and grief. They just basically lost not only their son and daughter-in-law, but they lost their grandchild. Being told, we never want to see you again. So my aunt, the Holocaust survivor, took every single picture and burned them in a metal trash can. That's what she did. And when asked how many children she has, she tells people, I have one daughter. That's what she says. Now, that's how she dealt with this grief. My uncle every week called me up and said to me, do you think there's a chance he might change his mind? Do you think that things might get better? And he had to verbalize his grief. His grief was, I've lost my son and I don't know how to get him back. What am I going to do about this? So every week I listened and I tried to help him, but there was very little I could do. He was finally able to get a meeting with his son a couple years later. And he thought, maybe, we'll reconcile. Maybe things will get better. What happened was it was supposed to be alone, him and his son, and the wife came along. And they met in the Turnpike restaurant and got thrown out because they were screaming. She was screaming at them, saying that they didn't belong in their lives anymore. That was the last time. He was 96 when he died. My aunt was 97, and they never saw their children, their son, their grandchildren, and their great grandchildren ever again. They actually didn't know them. Um, from my cousin, the sister, who hired a PI, she knew where they lived. She knows how many children there were and grandchildren. She even knew that one grandchild was born on my uncle's birthday. Talk about grief. This is a different kind of grief. This grief is about hope. You know somebody's alive, but they have told you that they never want to see you again, or the relationship has changed. And now what? You're hoping that maybe they'll change, maybe they'll come back, maybe things will get better, maybe things will be as they were. This is grief. This is an ongoing grief that can happen for years. And as I said, for my uncle, it was the rest of his life. For my aunt, that's how she dealt with her grief. My son is dead. I will never see him again. And that's the end of my relationship with him. So this came up, and the reason why this whole estrangement issue came up is because I was at a club and we were talking about grandchildren. And this woman talked about the fact that she was unable to see her 5-year-old grandchild. And I said, oh, is your grandchild far away? No, he's not so far away. And I said, oh, well, is there a problem? She said, there's been an ongoing problem with my daughter for many years. She's been a difficult person to deal with. I've not been able to have a good relationship with her, and she has kept me from seeing my grandson. Estrangement. She said, but I really learned how to deal better with this because I learned about a support group for people who have estranged children or estranged situations. And I read the article by Sherry McGregor. She's founder of an online support group called rejectedparents.net. Now, this is parents, but it could be anybody. It could be family members like a sister or brother. I've heard lots of stories about brothers and sisters that can't talk with each other anymore. I've heard parents, you and your parents. There's a lot of things about estrangement. But what the article talks about is you still are a good parent. You're saying to yourself, well, what did I do wrong? But you didn't do anything wrong. You were the parent that you were. Nobody's perfect, but she talks about what happened with her son and how he changed. They were close for a while, and then what happened was he got engaged to somebody, and she started comparing her family with this family. And I don't know. She says something happened. She says, I don't understand what happened. And she says, I was a good parent. I supported my child. I did everything as a good parent. people think, oh, it's your fault. You weren't a good parent. You did something wrong. That's not true. So estrangement comes in many different faces. And the way to deal with it, she says, is to start focusing on your own life. There are things that you can change and things you can't change. And she says, I he knows that I'm open to him whenever he needs to, if he ever needed to come back to me, if he never wanted to change or whatever he needed. However, I can't change him. I can't live my life for him. And I deserve to live my own life as well. She also and her husband told their children, listen, the relationship that we have with your brother could be different from the relationship you have with your brother. Um, so whatever you want to do. Now, the children decided that they wanted to support their parents and have not had anything to do with that brother at all. That again is what I read in this article. And so the whole article is really based on trying to cope with this grief about this child who's still alive, who's still somewhere in the in the world, but not being able to have the kind of relationship that they had or that she would have hoped to have, and not knowing what the future will be. This is difficult. This is, first of all, it's painful because what you've done is you've now have to let go of whatever you thought would be, whether that's, a very close relationship with that child, whether it's a close relationship with a family member, you're letting go of what you had hoped, and you have to replace that with something else. The difference here between this and the death of somebody is that when somebody is dead, they are gone. You have their legacy, you have their memories, you have everything from the past, and you can mourn that. What you have here in estrangement is this very strange kind of grief of what's going to happen next? Will it ever be the same? Will it ever come back? Will my son ever, or will my daughter ever, will my child ever see and have a relationship with me again the way it used to be or the way I'd hoped it would be? And there has to be a change in thinking. And as I said, this Sherry McGregor talks about that change and how important it is that you settle into a new way of thinking. And the new way of
You know,
thinking,
Lisa, I wonder if it's harder because in some of these stories that you're telling, it sounds like they had no idea what the reason was.
well,
Okay. So I wonder if it's harder when you have no idea what the reason was, or harder when you do know the reason. I don't know.
good question. That's a good question. Don't
Yeah.
know. Don't know. They do feel that people change with relationships. Um, People change for different reasons. Um, I mean,
Also with the mother and the children, she met in the diner there. How was their relationship for years? Going back to when he was a child, was it a close
very
relationship?
much so.
Was it not?
Very much so. I know my cousin. My cousin, they pointed out to everybody as the ideal son. The son who loved going on trips together, the son who did everything together with his parents. I mean, a brilliant kid. And I've seen this before because my older friend has a son who married somebody who they were not thrilled with. And there came a point where he had to make a decision whether it was going to be how close was he going to still be with his parents or how is it going to be with the wife. And he started visiting his parents, this is my older friend, alone without the wife because they weren't close to her and because it was a difficult, uncomfortable situation. So that's what they did. And he's very close to his parents. And he still is. I mean, she's 99 years old and he's a wonderful son. So he made that choice. He decided how he wanted it to be. Whereas my cousin decided that he was going to leave his parents, leave his sister, and just have the relationship with his wife and his children and grandchildren. So that's a personal choice. But for us, the parents, you know, that hope that you'll still have that son in your life, or the hope that you'll still be close, and you see even changes in, in people. You don't know who what how people are going to change. Let's just talk about the fact that you're a parent and you raise your children. They become adults and they change and they do whatever is right in their lives. It may not even be your values anymore. I've heard lots of Orthodox kids who were supposed to marry Orthodox who decide to now leave their religion. I've heard just the opposite. Ones that, I mean, there's a relative that was not religious who became religious. There's a lot of things that can change. The problem is, how does the relationship now change? And how do you remain and have a relationship? Some, it's absolutely none. I had thought that the woman who he married, when she converted to Judaism, everything was going to be fine. And then she converted back and had him convert to Catholicism. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what happened on her end. So we deal with grief and we deal with the process. And for us here to deal with people who we love and who we've given our lives to and who have changed, as I said, our family members, all different types. This is a very difficult grieving process. The hope that we can have something back again, or the hope that it's going to be the same the way it was, um, very different from somebody who has died. There's no more
So
hope
the
for that.
author of this book, does she
Uh-huh.
have any type of solutions that she gives her audience
Yeah. Her solution
that you can pass along?
is never give up, but that you have to live your life going forward. So make the decisions that are right for you. Live the life that you choose to live. Always stay open to the possibility that perhaps you might have a relationship again with that person, with that child or brother, sister, whatever. But that you have to move on. You have to move on. That's the only way you're going to live. And that's the only way you're going to live your life. And that's what she suggests. And that's why she started an online support group, because she didn't want people to think that they were alone in this very
Well,
difficult.
because it's not something that is so easily talked about. Like when you lose a loved one, right? We have the stages of grief and we have the one, two, three, four, and five, what you're going to go through and things that you can do along the journey that you're on. I think I don't anyway, hear a lot about this
Yep,
in society where it's very prevalent. I mean,
it
I
is.
think
That's
it's,
right. It is. It is very bad.
probably every other house down your street, but you don't hear about it and you don't talk about it. And how do we deal with this? And I think because as human beings, we know that we die. We don't handle death well through the years that we're here. And that's why when it happens, it's frightening, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's challenging. And will I ever get through this without them? So it's not talked about enough. And that's the reason we do what we do. But I think the world knows about people dying.
Yep,
Let's
that's right.
put it that way, right?
That's
They
right.
know we're all going to die and our family members are going to die. And it's a thing
That's right.
that we cannot change. I think when this kind of grief occurs, um, like you said before, it's not, you don't know if it's permanent. They're still here in the world. They're not dead.
That's right.
And it's not a topic. This is what I was getting at from the beginning. It's not a topic of conversation that many people want to share with
Right.
people in their circles because maybe they're embarrassed
Correct.
or they're hurt
Correct.
or they don't want to share this
Yep,
because it might change and they don't want to talk about a family member.
yep,
There's different scenarios to that. And I think that's why it's less talked about. And the help's not out there for people who really need it.
yep. And it definitely needs to be talked about. I meet a lot of people who refuse to go to a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner because there are estranged members of the family and they prefer to go on vacation. They don't want to see their brother or sister. They don't want to see their children, whatever it is. But they go on vacation. I've met people and they talk about that. I don't want to deal with the confrontations. I don't want to deal with the anger or whatever it is. And I don't want to deal with the fact that I can't stand them and I don't have a relationship with them, you know? But then there's the
And
hurt.
some human beings, though, are built that way. They're just built that way. You might think that makes them a terrible person. Okay. But I don't know, maybe it had something to do with their upbringing and their childhood and the people in their families. And I know myself, I don't like confrontation and I'll avoid it at all costs.
Yep. Yep.
Where I have a friend or a few friends that don't mind it, that'll make the phone call that needs to be made, or um, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. I do. And then there's the hurt. And then there's the embarrassment. What did I do wrong? What else could I have done? There's so many feelings involved. But it is a very difficult situation. And we do discuss so many difficult situations. So this is one of them. And as I said, a different kind of grief. I do want to mention this woman's name because she does deal with this. And she deals with children. So it's Sherry McGregor, McGregor, and she's the founder of the online support group rejectedparents.net. However, there are other support groups that she has, not just about children. She has a recent book called Done with Crying, and it is on Amazon. And there's even a workbook that's on Amazon about Done with Crying. So, the person who I met, the hurt that she feels, she said, it's interesting. She said it's been a couple years and she started tearing up again. And she said, I thought I was over this. And she said, but I realized I'm never going to be over this. I'm moving on. I'm living my life. I'm doing everything I want to do with my life, but it still hurts. And it's still difficult for me to think about that. I'm missing my 5-year-old grandchild. I'm missing my
You know,
only daughter.
I'm thinking it might be more difficult if you don't know what happened and why.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a question I had at the beginning of the video. But I'm thinking if you don't know, at least if you know if something happened and you can pinpoint it, whether you're right or wrong or they're right or wrong, at least you know what happened.
Right.
But by not knowing, that's kind of unfair
It
to the
is kind of
person who has
unfair.
no clue.
It is kind of unfair. And my cousin's answer was that choice. I believe, knowing her family and knowing where she came from, that she's dysfunctional and very jealous, that he had a really close relationship with his, parents, my aunt and uncle, and his sister. And I think from her divorce and from other stuff, I think she was very possessive of him and didn't want to share him. I think that was the bottom line. I don't think my aunt and uncle did anything bad. They want to be involved with their lives and maybe they asked a lot of questions, whatever, but that's not reason enough to decide, okay, I never want to see you again. So to me, the answer was that she was jealous.
And I think that was a little more hurtful than the person next door because those words sting. Those words were very, very hurtful. But I would probably, if I had to just guess off the top of my mind, and I know nothing about nothing, but if I had to guess, I would say that that's a rare 10% of people. I would say 90% of people have no clue and don't have the words come up in conversation. And they just have no clue on what happened. So they have to chalk it up to it's a change of seasons. Seasons change. friendships change. I think we talked about that in a couple videos when
We
it
did.
comes to loss.
We did.
I still have a friend that I don't speak to, and I have no clue why. It's left, it's silent. Um, I tried a few times. I have no clue why. I have another friend from many years ago. I know what happened. I know what happened, and it does make it a little easier. I don't agree with it. If the roles were reversed, I wouldn't have cut her out of my life if this
Mhm.
particular thing happened. I wouldn't have done that. But we're all different, right? We're different human beings because of where we came from, the things we've gone through.
Yes.
Our story
Yes.
affects us in future stories. So it's funny, isn't it?
Um,
That two close people in my life that I considered best friends. I let it go because I know what type of person she is, and I let that one go. I know what happened between us. But the other one is still so hard for me every day, having no clue.
See, I'm glad you brought that up because my partner, in the same way, he lost two people. They just disappeared. And he said, he'd welcome them back in his life if they decide to come back, but they just disappeared. And it's interesting how people just move on or whatever reason they don't want him in their lives anymore. I mean, and that's estrangement too. And that's a death because these were friends, close friends. So
Okay, here's another odd one for you.
go ahead.
Okay, that is it's not so much a grief because it's not old. The relationships aren't established and have been for many years. Meeting new people, right? So even the new friendships in your life or the new people in your life, when you think, oh my gosh, we have such a connection. What a wonderful connection that I'm going to know this person till my dying day. You have no doubt in the world. And then it just
Fizzles.
disappears and dissolves. That I could never understand. Is
That
it just that I felt that way towards people, but maybe they didn't feel the same way?
hmm hmm
Apparently.
hmm
Or is it just that we live busy lives? And if you were to ask some of these people that I've come across in my life, they'd say, "Oh, I don't know, life is just busy," and they have no reason either. They have no idea either.
So
But
I,
that's happened in my life as well,
uh,
and it blows my mind because I think, wow, you're really hitting it off with somebody.
okay. But you know what? Relationships take work. And some people don't want to put in that work. It's not worth it to
Yeah.
them. They don't want to. I make a distinction who I'm going to really go out of my way for. And I do with somebody who I've known for many, many years. If I don't call her, there's no way she's calling me. She's just never going to call me. And I call her, and when we get together, it's like wonderful. But if I waited, that'd be it. We have nothing. And so my choice is, do I want to put in more into the relationship? Do I feel that it's worth it? And I do. So I continue in and accept that that's the way it has to be. So I think, whether it's, a relationship from the old or the new, or it's a family member, there are decisions made about how far you're going to go. And the most extreme is that you cannot change people. You know, they
How
evolve.
long do you wait? How long do you wait before you surrender and live your life? And, that's another thing. How long do you give it time? You know, and I think again that has to do with the personality, where one person would say, "Oh, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Bye-bye. You don't have to tell me twice."
It's what you can live with. It's really what you can live with. But there comes a point where you can beat yourself up, like my aunt and uncle, especially my uncle, really. And the crying was horrible. He was so broken up. I was really worried about him. I was. And so, at some point he had just accept that his son wasn't coming back to him, period. You know? Um,
And they had absolutely no clue
Oh,
as to why.
I, he made up some story, which is a really interesting story. And I'll put it out there because what you try to do is rationalize. I feel it's because the woman was possessive and she was very jealous. And I know she was jealous because the kinds of questions she was asking us before they got married. I know that the jealousy was there. I know about her dysfunctional family and all. But my uncle, in order to come to terms with this loss, decided that there was, I don't even know how to discuss this. There was a mafia influence. She came from an Italian family in New Jersey. They, she was marrying into a different kind of family. And the only way that they could be safe is if they completely discommunicated with his family. Now, the only reason why he thought that, besides it was easier for him, is because when they went to the engagement at the home in New Jersey, there were two guards at the door. They were wearing these, he described them as trench coats, okay? And when he came to the door, my uncle had photography equipment, videography equipment, and my uncle loved things. And before they went in, they asked him, "Do you have any photography equipment?" He said, "Of course." And he said, "I'm the father of the groom, and of course I have all that." And they said, "You're not allowed to bring that in." And he said, "Says who?" And they said, "We do. And you won't be allowed in this house." And he had to put all his photography equipment into the car. And so he added up the whole thing together and decided
Yeah,
that that was, and for him, maybe that helped him accept
yeah.
that his son had decided he never wanted to be, he didn't want to be part of their lives anymore. And maybe that was better for him to think that way.
It's funny that they got a PI to
Wasn't
check
it
on
wasn't
them
it
and make
wasn't
sure
them. It wasn't them. It's my
it
cousin.
was a cousin
It's
or
my
something.
cousin.
Yeah,
But it's her sister. It's his sister. She wanted to know where they lived, wanted to know what happened, wanted to know how many children, grandchildren. I mean, she actually corresponded with him. She did let him know when, my aunt and uncle got sick, where they were, just in case he wanted to ever know. He didn't, and he didn't reach out and let him know when my uncle died, his father died, let him know when mother died. And he, by the way, she's going to send whatever she has left, whatever pictures or whatever, to him in case he wants, she doesn't want them, but in case he wants them. And this is years and years. We're talking about 38 years now.
yeah.
That was her choice and how she wanted to deal with her brother. So it's a horrible situation. Horrible, horrible for everybody involved. And we don't know how my cousin felt, we don't know everything. We don't know his side of the story at all. He could say his parents were terrible. I don't know. I just know from my side, I know my aunt and uncle. Um, you know, what can you say? But
Yeah.
the moral here is that it is a grief. It is a process of trying to reconcile yourself with this death, even though this person is alive. And as I said, whether it's sisters, brothers, whether it's friends, whether it's family, this is not the way you thought it would be. This is not how you had hoped it would be. This is painful. This is difficult for us to accept. But we do have to live our lives. And it's very important that we figure out how to move on the best we can. And that's not saying that you don't have that inside hope that things may get better or things may change or whatever, but it's very important that you not just sit there with that because you can live your life, your whole life, hoping.
Honestly, for your
That's
health,
right.
for your,
Mental, physical,
your physical
emotional.
health and
That's
your
right.
mental health,
That's right.
because that can spiral you into a depression.
Correct. Correct.
You know?
Correct. Correct.
Hmm,
So,
very
yeah,
interesting.
yes.
Well, I hope today helped some of our listeners today.
Yeah.
in knowing that I wish we could have given them more clear-cut solutions. However, there really aren't any because we're all such different creatures, right?
That's
We've
right.
come from different places. We're a puzzle, you know? We're all different puzzle pieces that live on this earth. So, but I think everything you said was helpful, and I hope it helps one person out there today,
Me too.
right?
Me too. Yep. Yep.
So thank you very much for that
Sure.
story today.
Sure. Thank you,
And
Susan.
enjoy your warm weather, Lisa.
We'd like it to be warmer here in Florida, by the way. It sounds what we'd
And
like it to
and
be.
I saw the news this morning and they put the temperatures on the state of Florida.
Huh?
And I saw 32,
That's right.
30.
That's right.
I've never seen that before in
I
Florida.
have.
So,
I have. I've been in
okay.
Disney World where it's been the 30s and I've worn like a Parker. So I
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
covering the orange groves and everything else. However, the hope and the forecast is that it will get back up to 60s and 70s, whereas New
Very
York
good.
does not have that possibility. So
Very good.
try and stay warm, Susan.
So thank you for that today, Lisa, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds great. Take good care, everyone. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.